Thanks for tuning in to Proline TV as we talk hockey. That's right. As you can see, the Stanley Cup is sitting there ready for the team in 2025 to pick it up and skate around the rink and have all sorts of fun. One of our analysts here has already been through it. Kevin Rogers, we want to introduce him to our channel here at Proline TV as our newest hockey analyst. He'll also be working some NASCAR with us for the 2025 season. And Kevin, thanks a lot for joining us here on this show and on the channel.
Greg, thank you so much. Jan, also good to talk to you as well. And just looking forward to this new chapter now with football being done and some new things to look forward to here in the spring.
Absolutely. And Kevin, tell us, this is the first time that you're on the channel. Tell us a little bit about, I just referenced, of course, the Panthers. So talk a little bit about how you and the Panthers are connected.
Well, for years, I've worked on their radio broadcasts going back to 2014, working on the radio network with pregame, intermission, and postgame. And it's been a long journey. It really has. I was there when I was in high school. I was there for that run in '96, the Stanley Cup final with the Rats, and then they lost to Colorado in 4 games. But it felt like years and years and years of trying to become relevant again. And they finally did that right before the pandemic, where they started to be a playoff team and then winning a round or so in the playoffs, then always losing to Tampa Bay. But then getting to the Stanley Cup final the last 2 years has been an unbelievable experience here in South Florida when none of the other teams are really doing much. So they've kind of been the team to watch. And, unfortunately, they ran out of gas against Vegas 2 years ago, but then finally getting over the hump against Edmonton last year, going to Game 7 when maybe it shouldn't have gone to a Game 7, but still they won that, and just a thrilling experience to be a part of. And now they're still in the mix again. So really, it's good times down in South Florida for hockey.
So we have a Florida Panther fan here, and of course, Jan Levine, our resident Ranger fan, is joining us once again. Believe it or not, from Iowa. So don't ask. So Jan, how's everything going? I know the Rangers have been through a lot since the last time we spoke.
That is a mild understatement, to say the least. Brilliant start to the season, a 4-15-0 run where most people and most Ranger fans were questioning as to the direction of the team, whether or not they had the right leadership. Ownership we've questioned for years, given the fact that most people are not big Dolan fans, at least even among the diehard fan base. But whether or not the GM was the right GM with Drury, whether or not Laviolette was the right coach, whether or not we had the right mix of players, more trade rumors you can probably shake a stick at. And Greg, probably you as a Vancouver fan, saw about 9,000 of them because JT Miller and the Rangers were rumored as kind of a combination for weeks before the deal finally got done. But they've righted the ship a little bit, though clearly they are far from out of the woods as they're still on the outside looking in right now for a playoff spot, though. Despite all the warts that they have, there's still a decent amount of positivity based upon what we've seen so far, though it's been kind of a seismic graph right now in terms of the up and downs we've seen from this team in the last couple of weeks.
Just in case this is the first time they're tuning in to find out about hockey in general here on the channel, and this is the first go around with you, Jan. Tell us a little bit about who you're working with and who do you cover?
Sure. So in terms of the Rangers, right, for a website called Hockey Buzz, more of a hockey rumor site, but I've been probably covering the Rangers for them for, I think it's 15 years already. Been also cover fantasy hockey and fantasy baseball for RotoWire. I've been with them since, I think, almost 2002. So it's been a pretty long stint in terms of me covering them. To show you how long I've been writing, I think I submitted my first column, which was an off-season winners losers column from a hotel room on business in Minnesota using a dial-up line through my phone. So that gives you a lot of sense as to how long I've been doing this. And I've actually started in the last year. I've been covering fantasy hockey for the Hockey News. So I'm writing directly for their digital website in terms of covering the breadth and depth of kind of fantasy hockey. So been kind of doing this for a wee bit of time and been a Ranger fan ever since I've been a little kid.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The reason we're doing this is we have a little bit of time off, and obviously when they come back from the break, there's only going to be about, 20 games left? Something like that?
A little more than that, but about that, yeah, a little about a third of the
25?
season or so. About a
Okay.
third of the season left.
So we figured this is as good a time as any. Take a deep breath and take a look at how things are going and get some predictions. So we're going to go over the futures and so forth. So let me pop on the screen here so we can go over each division, each conference, starting, of course, with the Atlantic. So there's the Atlantic division. And matter of fact, let me even pop. Yeah, there's the Atlantic, there's Metro. Boy, what a change this year for Washington to be at the top. Let's pop up the wild card because this is the question that I have. I wanted both of you guys to chime in here. So, because you're pretty similar on this, which are going to be the wild card teams representing both conferences. And you both have the Rangers in the East, but Kevin, you've got Ottawa, and Jan has Boston as the other team. Now, I just want to make sure to clarify, though, that means that both of you guys do believe that these 6 teams are going to make it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would think as of right now, given what we've seen so far and given what's transpired in terms of the type of play and the type of teams they are, I mean, I think obviously we both think the 2 Florida teams should be pretty much in. Florida, clearly, Tampa, maybe a little less so, but they're clearly the class right now of that division. And Toronto, I mean, now that they have both of their goalies with Stolars and Woll back between the pipes, they're pretty set as well to give them a really good opportunity to make it out of the Atlantic division.
Okay. So again, as far as the wild card, only 2 can make it. Kevin, you have Ottawa. Jan has Boston. You both have the Rangers. Why do you have Ottawa, Kevin?
Well, right now, I mean, I understand they had that little skid coming to the Sunshine State to end the called first half or end the pre-Four Nations break, whatever you want to call it, losing twice at Tampa Bay and then losing to the Panthers. You know, that was kind of tough, but they had won, I believe, 10 of 12 before that. They're playing well at home. And just seeing what else is up there, I don't have a lot of faith in Detroit. They had that big winning streak. I don't think they'll be able to maintain it. Columbus, the same thing with them. I just don't think that they're going to keep it up. So Ottawa, not that they built any kind of nice lead. They're only up by 1 over Detroit, but, you know, they played well. They have the scoring, their goaltending. We'll see if it can hold up. But then looking at the Rangers, why I like them, they had their skid earlier in the season. You know, when Shesterkin's healthy, you still have scorers on that team. I think they could make a run and just be able to get into the wild card. You're not asking them to finish top 3 in the Metro. Just get into the wild card. I think they have a chance to do that. I just don't have a lot of faith in the Bruins. And, you know, seeing what's happened the last few years of going from the best regular season ever to then losing in the second round last year, I feel like it's just fallen off. They just don't have the talent they had before. Past Pasternak, I don't really know how much I trust their offense. And Swayman's been up and down, so I just can't put any faith in the Bruins. I think it's going to end up being the Senators and Rangers being the 2 wildcard teams.
Okay, so interesting here as far as the odds are concerned. It's actually Vegas believes it will be the Rangers in Boston, even though Ottawa is close behind. So, Jan, you have Boston and the Rangers. And actually, again, just taking a look at the way the standings look, and I haven't even looked at the games played, but those would pretty much be, 2. Now, look, these are the 2 named teams. These are the 2 teams with the reputations. They're in the playoffs almost every year. You feel more confident that those 2 will move into this little area here, but you've got Boston instead of Ottawa. Why do you like Boston and the Rangers, Jan?
Sure. So, in full disclosure, actually, if Kirill Marchenko and if everybody in Columbus was healthy, I might have actually taken Columbus. But with Marchenko being out long term and some of the other injuries they have, it's the reason why I didn't take Columbus. Though they're probably the most fun team out of that group to watch. But in terms of Boston, look, as Kevin mentioned, right, Swayman has been very up and down, but his late start to the season somewhat contributed to it. I think Marchand, while he's going to be playing in the Four Nations, will benefit from some time off. You look at Zacha hasn't had a particularly great year. Charlie Coyle hasn't had a great year. Elias Lindholm has been a nice fit. I do like the blue line with Laurie and with McAvoy, who's now back from an injury. And I just think from a overall pedigree, they have a really good shot at kind of making a run. I happen to like Ottawa. Linus Ullmark has been kind of a godsend. So it should be fun. It's actually going to be interesting to be seeing is Swayman or Olmark, given the relationship between the two of them in Boston, which one make it out of the two? And then, as Kevin said, the Rangers have had their skid. There's still a lot of questions on this team because Zibanejad struggled, Chris Kreider struggled. I mean, Shesterkin's had his injuries and he's out again now, so Jonathan Quick's going to have to hold down the fort maybe for a couple games after the break, which comes at a really good time for the injury. But I do think that with getting JT Miller brings a little bit of a physical quotient that they were lacking up front. They were a little too soft at times. He's going to kick people, Kevin, Greg, as you know, he'll kick people in the rear end and won't take any quarter in terms of in that locker room. So he's going to kind of hopefully change the mindset and the culture a little bit in that room, which I think is kind of something that they needed and has been lacking. And as Kevin said, right, if Shesterkin is on, he can kind of carry a team and for a fairly long period of time and give him a realistic shot at getting out of the thing. But one team to look out for, and there's a lot of rumors what the Islanders are going to do. If they end up trading Dobson, that's going to kill their blue line. But if they keep Dobson and find a way to re-sign Brock Nelson, and with the way Sorokin's been playing, keep an eye on the Islanders as kind of a really, really, really good long shot.
Okay. And because I was going to ask that question, Kevin, would you agree that if one of these four teams here were to make a run, that the Islanders would be the team, or do you have another one of these teams that you would be more confident would make that run?
Out of those four, it would have to be the Islanders simply because I don't trust the Canadians. They had their little hot streak. I feel like now they've cooled off and they're not going to come back. The Penguins dug themselves too big of a hole. The Flyers are dismantling their team. So just out of that four, I would say the Islanders, and they have the best goaltending out of that group. So I don't think the Islanders will end up making it when it's all said and done, but just out of those four, they're the best out of those four.
Okay. Let's go to the West. And same question. You guys both believe that these six teams are going to make it.
Yep.
Okay. So here's the wild card. You both like Colorado. Actually, the interesting thing here is you both like Colorado and you both like Calgary. So I have no idea what you guys are thinking, moving Calgary ahead of Vancouver. But because this is my expertise. I have one expertise, and it's Vancouver. But go ahead and explain why you guys are smoking the funny weed by thinking that Calgary, after Vancouver's let them hang around all season, and now that Vancouver's ready to make their run, why you think the Calgary has what it takes to make the playoffs, because they've been a big surprise this year, Jan.
2 words: Dustin Wolf. That's the reason why. Guy who should be one of the top 3 for the Rookie of the Year, along with Matvei Michkov and with Celebrini. He's been phenomenal. He's been one of the best goalies in the league this year. You combine that also with, you look at the scoring. Coronado's finally started to wake up a little bit. Mackenzie Weegar is a really good first-line defenseman. Rasmus Anderson's been up and down, but they have talent up front. Wolf between the pipes. Look, I know Demko's finally starting to, turn into form, but they've had some injuries, Vancouver. And I love Philip Hedl. And if Heedle's actually a really good 2C for your team, they have a really good shot at making it. I just a big believer in what Dustin Wolf has done so far and what I think Dustin Wolf can do down the stretch. And look, Colorado is just a great team. We all know that the Mikko Rantanen trade kind of shocked all of us, but Martin Necas has kind of fit in pretty nicely along with Nathan McKinnon. So they haven't had too big of a drop off on that top line. And when you have guys like him and Cale Makar, and now they got a number one goalie in Mackenzie Blackwood, who was a steal of a trade from San Jose, it's kind of hard to rule against the Avalanche as well.
Jan gave his input on Calgary. What do you think about why Calgary should make the playoffs this season?
Well, one guy that Jan didn't mention who's having a great season is Jonathan Huberdeau as well, because Huberdeau, when he came from the Tkachuk trade, he didn't do anything. Like, his numbers were terrible, and somehow he's played better this season. They got the 2 guys from the Flyers, bringing them in too. So Calgary, I'm not saying they're putting their chips in the middle of the table, but at least, they're trying to make a run here at this. And with Vancouver, what's interesting too, when you look at the standings there, they've been really good on the road and they just can't figure it out at home, that there's no home ice advantage. And I don't know what it was last year with them, how maybe it's just they caught lightning in a bottle, how they won that Pacific Division. And now we see, all right, we know Edmonton is the class. Edmonton and Vegas are the class of that division. And Vancouver's good, but they weren't the class of it. Just everything broke right. Edmonton had that terrible start to last year. They had the coaching change and everything worked out after that. Seeing what they did in Vegas had injuries. So kind of everything broke right for Vancouver. I think that now, in spite of Vancouver playing as well as they are, I think Calgary can still catch them. And then you look at the teams below them. Utah is not going to make it. St. Louis dug themselves too big of a hole before. And then when you look at, you reference the Kings, LA's defensive numbers are great. You look at how many goals they've allowed and the plus 15, but also they really aren't great offensively. So I don't know how many games they can try to win 2-1 or 3-2. So LA, I still think will end up being that number 3 team coming out of the Pacific. But then if they draw Vegas or Edmonton, we know it's kind of lights out for them. I feel like every time they play Edmonton in the first round, they get knocked out in 6 games. So LA will probably end up being in when it's all said and done, but I just don't think they're going to go very far.
Yeah, look, I don't think anybody, who knows how long it's going to take for people to realize what went on in that Vancouver dressing room with Miller and Pettersson, and who knows, maybe they'll hook up this week, which would be interesting. But whatever happened, the entire mood with the team has changed, and that's why I feel confident that they're going to go on a continued run. That they were able to go 4-0 without Quinn Hughes, and they're going to get him back. Which is obviously just a major lift. The defense has been changed dramatically. It's just incredible what happened when you get Roenick back, and you also make the trade for Pettersson. And this guy has just changed the entire blue line situation for them. And now they're playing hockey the way Rick Tocchet wants them to play. But they can't make the run unless Demko's healthy. He something would happen to him in the last game. If it's just a little bit of a setback and he's going to be perfectly fine in 2 weeks and he continues to play like that, there's just no way Vancouver can't make the playoffs with Demko playing at a vis and a pace, but he's got to stay healthy. Let's get some bargains. Let's get some Stanley Cup future bargains. And both of you guys have agreed on one of the bargains that you have, and that is Colorado. Taking a look at Colorado's Stanley Cup odds, they're sitting here, where are they at? 14-1. And Jan, both you and Kevin have Colorado as the best bargain to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, look, pedigree matters, talent matters. You know that they're going to be more than willing to do whatever they need to do in order to improve their team. Time will tell whether they're not getting rid of Matt Rantanen, who, in full disclosure, is one of my favorite players in the NHL. Right, so time will tell as to whether or not Colorado making that move, which is in essence it was a salary move. Right, they felt they couldn't re-sign him to a long-term deal. The viewpoint was we're going to recoup assets for him now before he goes without us getting anything. So Martin Necas was a nice little consolation prize for them to bring in. But with Makar and Taves on the blue line, they made the trade early in the year of dealing Alexander Georgiev to get Mackenzie Blackwood. So they kind of have a number one. The jury's out on him as to whether or not he can win a cup. But we saw Darcy Kemper win a cup. So we've seen guys like Antti Niemi win a cup. So I wouldn't rule out a guy like Mackenzie Blackwood being able to win a cup. And look, when you have a leader like Nathan McKinnon, who has the ability and the capacity to put a team on his back, especially paired on the top line when Necas being there and Jonathan Drouin and the talent around him, 14-1 seems to be a fairly decent odds in terms of them as a potential long shot favorite to make a run to win the cup.
Kevin, do you think that the Achilles heel though of Colorado would be that they're not as deep as they were when they won their cup several years ago?
I mean, that's obviously, up there, but also with all the roster changes, we'll see how that turns out. And, one of the reasons why I like them at 14-1, even if you compare them to Washington, I just don't have faith Washington's getting the Stanley Cup. I think in the Western Conference, it is wide open. And Colorado, we saw what they did to Winnipeg last year in the first round, and they lose to Dallas in the second round. Once you're getting a mix of Colorado, Dallas, Edmonton, Vegas, I feel like who knows who could win win that series. And when you see Edmonton at 6-1, Vegas is ahead of them, Winnipeg's in the same price range as Colorado, that why not? And with Nathan McKinnon and the numbers he could put up, and like Jan mentioned with Blackwood, that they needed to make an upgrade at goalie, that Georgiev just wasn't cutting it anymore. And you see just going to San Jose, it's not working there either. Obviously, it's a different situation there. But even the goalies in the Western Conference, like Connor Hellebuck, is like the gold standard. But then after that, Jake Ottinger's pretty good. But then, you say, do you depend on Aiden Hill? Do you depend on Stuart Skinner? Or some of these guys, even Darcy Kemper, are they guys you really have a lot of faith in, where Blackwood's probably in that mix? And as long as they have the offense in front of him, Blackwood can have a couple good series. Who knows? Maybe they can make another run.
I'll tell you one of the odds I'm already looking at here that is completely out of whack. I'll tell you right now is that there's no way the LA Kings should be 16-1. Absolutely no way. I wouldn't even be surprised if things keep going well for Vancouver if they pass them this regular season. They're 60-1. So I think the Kings should be more in the lines. Honestly, taking a look at these other teams here, I think it should be like 25-30-1. That's what I would put them. But I don't know if you guys feel better about the Kings than I do, but they're not 16-1. They're not on pace with these teams. That's for sure. They're only 2 points behind Colorado and 4 behind Vegas. Come on. The Kings winning a Stanley Cup, not going to happen.
I don't see them beating 3 teams. I don't see the Kings beating 3 of those teams against the Stanley Cup.
No. Maybe they win a series. That's about it.
Part of that may be impacted by Drew Doughty coming back, which clearly certainly helps their blue line. And guy's been out all the year. And, Brand Clark has been a healthy scratch. So the hope is maybe that Doughty can help Clark kind of unlock his game a little bit. And look, Andrzej Kopitar is a great center, a great leader on that team. Kevin Fiala has been very good. Adrian Kempe has been very good. They need some secondary scoring, but look, Kemper's got a cup, just like Aiden Hill's got a cup. So that clearly has to factor in to the rankings as well. Though, sure. If you're going to rank them compared to other teams, they shouldn't necessarily be that close. They should be more in between the Minnesota and the Rangers range.
The other team that you think is a bargain, Kevin doesn't believe in them to win a cup, but you do, Jan. You think that 14-1, that's a good enough number for you?
Well, considering where you and I started talking earlier in the year, what they were at, and kind of how the numbers have gone down, and we keep waiting for the rug to get pulled out from under them. And every time I turn around, somehow, Alexander Ovechkin scoring an empty net goal to get closer to Gretzky seemingly every single night. But you look at what they've done. Look, Logan Thompson, which we all I think will agree should be Canada's number 1 goalie, but he and the GM and the coaching staff for Team Canada just don't get along, which is why he's not there. But he's been a godsend, in Washington, replacing Kemper, who went out to LA in the trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and he and Charlie Lindgren, who was the number 1 last year, have really solidified the net there. And then John Carlson's had a really good rebound year. Tom Wilson's been pretty good. Dubois has been very good there. I mean, Dylan Strome has really unlocked his game since moving over from Chicago to Washington. So I keep waiting for them to slip and keep waiting for them to slip. And every time I look up, another week goes by and they really haven't gone anywhere. So it's getting harder and harder to rule them out, especially when they're going to be aggressive at the deadline and try to fill any of the gaps. Given Ovechkin's aging, this could be his last real shot at getting a cup. And I do think they'll be aggressive to try to fill some of the holes on that team.
Well, look, I mean, they're already headed towards possibly winning the trophy, which means that they'll be out in the first or second round. So that's hockey. Okay, so let's go into interesting because you've got Washington as not only a bargain, but it's actually your pick right now to come out of the East, Jan.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Carolina yet, just because I think their goaltending. Look, Freddie Anderson has always been great in the regular season, but I think we all know once the playoff hits, it's his kryptonite, that he just can't get the job done. And Pyotr Kochetkov has been good. They just don't seem to trust him as their number 1 goalie as they go into the playoffs. And part of it, I think, is how well Mikko Rantanen adapts. He hasn't had the easiest transition so far, been very up and down. I've heard a lot of whispers as to whether or not he's going to want to resign there. Maybe a lot of just speculation, just given his slow start. But look, I do think Carolina probably on the face of it should be the top team coming out of the East. But I don't know whether or not, look, they seemingly always spit the bit come playoff time. And look, I love Florida, but reaching a cup finals 3 years in a row is very difficult. I mean, doing it 2 years in a row is next to impossible. 3 years in a row has been unheard of for several years, which may be the only reason why I don't necessarily view them as the favorite. And like I said, I just think Washington's going to do whatever they can to give Ovechkin one more kick at the can to try to make a run to the cup and do whatever they can, even if they do win the President's Trophy.
Okay. And Kevin, you're sticking with Florida, and you also have Winnipeg in the West.
First with the Panthers, I mean, Jan makes a good point. I mean, it's a hard thing to disagree with. Can you keep it up 3 straight years? You played a lot of hockey the last 2 years, so that's the key. And they lost Matthew Tkachuk in the Vegas series, and that hurt them. And they stayed relatively healthy during last year's run. And some guys went cold in the Edmonton series before playing well in Game 7. So again, you got to stay away from injuries, and you got to just keep it up, which is not going to be easy. But also on the flip side with the Panthers, since that 7-game series against Boston, now granted they were a wild card, since that 7-game series back in 2023 against Eastern Conference foes, they dispatched Toronto in 5, they beat Carolina in 4, they beat Tampa Bay in 5, they beat Boston, I think, in 6, and they beat the Rangers last year, in 6. So they didn't go to 7 games in any series against Eastern Conference foes in the last 5 series they played. And, again, in reality, against Edmonton, you're up 3-0. You were cruising in that series before the Oilers played out of their minds for 3 games. The Panthers stunk before getting to Game 7. But I guess the point is that if you get to the Eastern Conference Final, okay, who would you end up drawing? You're going to get a wild card team probably in the first round. So you get Ottawa, Detroit, Boston, the Rangers, like you get one of those who you should probably beat. But then you get to the second round, seeing how everything turns out. Like, yeah, the one team that's given them problems this year has been New Jersey. New Jersey has given them problems a few times. Washington, they've lost to twice. They had that game last week in D.C. where it was close throughout, and then Washington blew up in the third period. They have played well against Carolina. They've beaten them 2 out of 3. But as far as in the Atlantic, they still have played well against Toronto. They still have the Maple Leafs number. And I really wouldn't prefer to see Tampa Bay again, even though they beat them last year. But I feel like Tampa Bay, it's almost like addition by subtraction. You lose Steven Stamkos to Nashville. I think they played better without Stamkos, and Nashville has not been the team they thought they would be with Stamkos. So I really wouldn't want to pray for Tampa Bay again. But the point is, they played well enough. I don't know what would happen if you got to the Stanley Cup final, if you drew Edmonton again, if you drew Vegas again. And you mentioned my pick about Winnipeg. I said it earlier that you have the best goalie in Hellebuck, so you know that you have scorers on that team. But also Winnipeg got bounced early in the playoffs last year. We'll see if they use that as motivation this year. The West, like I said, you got 4 or 5 teams you make an argument for. You really can. And I think maybe Winnipeg could be the one that gets out of it this year. But still with the Panthers, yes, you need health and you need to have your big guns play well. If they have that, the Panthers would be back in the Stanley Cup final.
Jan, you've also got Winnipeg. And speaking of Hellebuck, he was off to just an amazing start to the season. Looked like just give him his 3rd Vezina. But he's kind of cooled off a little bit. Now, maybe that's just a cool off. It's a long season. They'll pick things back up, maybe even after this 4 Nations. But they cannot afford a Connor Hellebuck to not be on top of his game. And the thing about Winnipeg has been the postseason. They haven't been able to get over the hump.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Helly's a great goalie. He probably will rebound, as Kevin said, right? Offensively, they're very well balanced. You look at Mark Scheifele. I do think America is finally going to get, and the world's going to finally get to see Kyle Connor on a big stage and realize just how good Kyle Connor is. Their blue line with Josh Morrissey. The guy who's been an unsung hero on the blue line has been Dylan Sandberg. His metrics are really off the chart in terms of just how good he's been, which has been part of their weakness defensively. But they have a well-balanced attack offensively. They have a really good 3rd and 4th line, especially a 3rd line, in my opinion. And Helly's the type of guy that can carry them. But the West is loaded, right? So, we've talked about, he's slumped. But you haven't to, part of it I talked about a lot of guys last year is who do you match up in the first round, right? If you're going to go against a team that's going to be a physical team in the first round and a physical team in the second round, and your opponent, like last year, Edmonton kind of had a cakewalk, that had a material impact in terms of what happened in the next round. Colorado fell prey to it. Winnipeg has fallen prey to it. So part of it really gets into those matchups as to who you face. As Kevin said, if Edmonton plays LA again, right, for them, it's almost a cakewalk because every year they seem to meet each other and they kind of get past them. But if you have Dallas and Colorado, for example, for some reason meeting against each other, those two teams beat the living tar out of each other, which has a downstream impact in the second and the third round. So part of what you have to look for is who the matchup when it comes to making it out of the West, and who does each team face, and how do the styles mesh against each other?
Yeah, nobody wants to face Colorado as a wild card. That's for sure. Okay, so next, and you guys agree with this, and that is to buy and to sell. This is our last topic, and that is the fact that both of you guys want to buy on Minnesota but sell on New Jersey, meaning that Minnesota is a team that, of course, you can see them right now where Minnesota stands, third place in the Central. So obviously, they're in the playoffs, and that's what they are. They're a playoff team. But Kevin, we'll start with you on Minnesota, and then of course you can also go in on New Jersey the other way. You think Minnesota is a team that could have a really good run here in the last 20-25 games, especially if you're just giving advice on anybody that's going to be picking games on a daily basis. You think that this could be a team that could maybe make you some money down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we'll both talk about, Kirill Kaprizov. You get a guy like that back from injury whenever he's ready. And yes, that's going to turn around your team. And Minnesota missed the playoffs last year. So, we'll see, if they can get back in, for the second time in 3 years. They lost to Dallas a few years ago. And, again, in this West, who's going to make that run? And it feels like every year we're having a different team make that run. And we'll see if Gustafsson can hold up in the Minnesota net. But, the Wild, it's still a tough place to play at XL Energy Center. And Minnesota will just grind it out. I know they had a couple games. They got shut out right before the break, but then they played better against Carolina at home. But, we see the standings there in the Central where Colorado, just shows you how good that Central is. Colorado's a fourth-place team. Now you have Winnipeg, who had that incredible start. They fell off. Now they've won 8 straight. And you have Dallas, who we haven't even mentioned Dallas in this whole thing. How, they're still right there, in, again, a little bit of arm's length away from Winnipeg, that Dallas, Minnesota, and Colorado are going to fight it out for second place and home ice in the first round. But for the Wild, they also feel like a team that's kind of been forgotten. And again, you look at, the goal differential there where Winnipeg's got a big number.
Yeah,
Dallas has a big number. Yeah, Minnesota's a plus.
And they got 4. Yeah.
But look at that number 2, a couple columns down, 20 wins on the road. They played well on the road, and we'll see if they can keep that up. And then just quickly on New Jersey, with all of their injuries, with Markstrom hurt, we'll see when he comes back. I just don't have faith in the Devils making a large run in the playoffs. Can they win a round? Maybe, but you know what? I can't tell you if they face Carolina in the first round if they're going to beat them 4 times. I don't think that's the case. That's why I don't have faith in them. I just don't think that they will even get past Carolina, and I think it's clear that that's probably going to be, out of all the matchups in the first round, I think that's the only one we could say right now we're probably going to see. That we're pretty sure that's going to be one of the 8 matchups in the first round. And because I don't think Washington's going to fall back. I don't think Carolina's going to catch them. But New Jersey, they're good. We saw them make that run a few years ago where they were a bad team and they kind of got into the playoffs. They beat the Rangers. They end up getting to the second round. I just don't think they'll have enough to beat Carolina in 4 games. So, yes, they're still a playoff team, but I think the first round, it's over for them.
Jam, what is the biggest difference between how everybody thought highly of New Jersey at the start of the season and now why you guys are souring on them down the stretch?
Well, Kevin mentioned one of them, obviously, the loss of Jacob Markstrom, and we don't know how long he's out. I mean, Jake Allen has done a decent job of holding down the fort, backed up by Nico Dawes and others, but that's a big loss.
What is the prognosis?
Markstrom.
What's the prognosis right now?
And they have Nico Hischier out as well. And we're not quite sure exactly when Hischier is going to come back. So he's been a phenomenal number 2 center and probably a better all-around center than Jack Hughes has been this year. Part of it also is I think Paul Cotter and Stefan Nissen got off to ridiculously hot starts, and they've come back to earth a little bit. But contrast that with what Timo Meier and Andre Palat has done, And then on their blue line, look, they have a very good blue line. I mean, getting Brent. The only problem is Brendan Dillon got off to a decent start. He's been brutal, in my opinion, probably the last month and a half, even though he's been paired with Dougie Hamilton. Siegenthaler has been pretty good. You look at Jonathan Kovacevic has been pretty good. Luke Hughes has been okay. I mean, they were so good defensively that Simon Nemec was sitting down in Utica as opposed to being with the parent club for a while. So I think the two big keys for me, though, is when do you get Jacob Markstrom back and when do you get Nico Hischier back? And then, as Kevin said, look, Kirill Kaprizov is probably one of my top 5 favorite players in the NHL. But you look at the young guys, you look at Boldy, you look at Marco Rossi, especially Rossi this year, has taken a material step forward. Matt Zuccarello missed some time. He's been back. Brock Faber really hasn't had a good year. I'm expecting Faber to really have a big stretch run to the season. Them getting back Jacob Middleton from an injury has been a big help for them. They've gotten back other guys. They've gotten back a couple. Jared Spurgeon has come back from his injury. That's going to help their blue line. I mean, as Kevin said, the Gus bus has been very up and down for them, but it's kind of nice insurance policy to know you can tap Marc-Andre Fleury on the shoulder and put a guy out there as your number 2 goalie who's got a really good shot. And we talked about, Washington wanting to send Alexander Ovechkin, moving forward with a cup win. That Minnesota and Bill Guerin's done a nice job recovering with the dead cap money that you have for Suter and Parise sitting on the books, which comes off next year. They're going to try to do whatever they can maybe to give Fleury a nice little run at a shot at a long run in the playoffs, with this being his last season in the NHL as well.
And by the way, you also, Jan, you're also buying on Carolina as a team.
I like Carolina. I mean, look, you have to figure Randon's going to figure it out with Sebastian Aho, right? The two of them are going to eventually figure it out. And their blue line, getting Gostisbehere has been a nice little addition for them. He's played fairly well on their blue line. They are a overall talented team. The big key is, can you trust Freddie Anderson in the playoffs? Can you trust Pyotr Kochetkov in the playoffs? Last year, obviously, they lost to the Rangers a couple of times in a row. To me, whether or not they can get over that hump, to me, is the big challenge associated with them. Talent-wise, they have all the talent in the world, and I'm to like Rod Brindamore a lot as a coach. The question is playoff pedigree. Can they find a way, even with Jordan Staal there, to get to that next level?
All right. So full disclosure, on our channel, I've already made a prediction, or I put actually the Rangers into my futures. I like doing futures a lot. And the Rangers, I had them at 40-1. It was the week before they acquired Miller. I think we all knew that was coming. So I felt, hey, they were on that winning streak. And I don't know about you, Jan, but I kind of felt that after that winning streak, that it was like, well, we don't want to ruffle any feathers right now. And as soon as they lost 2 straight, it's like, all right, what's that? That's over with. All right, let's make the deal. That's kind of how I feel it kind of went down. But anyway, they're still at 35-1. I think of any of these teams, besides my own, that are really long shots to win it. I think the Rangers are the top team. I don't think there's a better team to take with odds that high down here than the Rangers. I don't know if you guys agree with me.
I mean, look, I'll let you read Larry Brooks for the last couple of times when he's ripped the Rangers and see if you have the same view. But there's a lot of people who still question the moxie of this team.
Yep.
They question the heart at times of this team. Look, I mean, as I've referred to them a lot of my columns, I've referred to Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider as the Glimmer Twins, because their play has really been subpar, though Zibanejad has been a lot better over the last couple of weeks. Kreider, I think, is really nursing a bad back injury that has been underreported and something he had earlier in the year, and he hasn't been himself. But talent-wise, they have all the talent in the world. But as Kevin can attest to, unless you have the willingness and desire to win battles one-on-one in the corner and be willing to go north-south in the playoffs and necessarily stay away from the east-west, that'll determine whether or not you have the ability and the capacity to move forward in the playoffs. And they have all the talent in the world. The jury's still far out, in my opinion, as to whether or not they have the heart and the willingness to do what it takes to get to that next level, which is what we saw out of Florida the last couple of years.
Well, again, that's the reason why, when you're taking teams that have numbers that big, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that talent pedigree. and you're saying, all right, well, it's not working right now, but if it works, then they could be very dangerous. And that's why you take long shot picks like that, because you're hoping that maybe something clicks, even though chances are it probably won't. But this is sports, and we know anything can happen, especially in hockey. So, but would you agree on that, Kevin? Or do you think there's another like long shot team that you think, if we go way down here, that could make a run to the Stanley Cup Finals?
No, I'd probably stick with the Rangers simply because of, like what Janice said, the talent is still there. If you get the good Shesterkin, then, you have a shot. And 2 years ago, they're up 2-0 out of the gate against the Devils. They dominate them and they lose that series. You kind of say, what happened? And then they redeem themselves by getting to the Eastern Conference Final last year before losing to the Panthers. But, at the same time, seeing these teams around them, I'm not a fan of Boston. I don't think they can make a run. Ottawa, I think, could get in, but that's it. Whoever they play in the first round, they'll get bounced. And Vancouver's another team I just can't see making a run, and everyone else there, I just don't even see it.
Sure.
But
I mean, this team has been just a major disappointment. I mean,
the biggest disappointment of the whole league, I think.
Yeah.
You get
there's no hope at all. Do you guys believe that they can somehow just get hot?
No, you get Stamkos, you get Marshall, so you think, okay, and understandably they're kind of, on the other end of their career, but at the same time, you think at least you'll be in the wild card mix, and you're just out of it felt like the beginning of November, that you're just done, and they're just playing out the string the last few months. But going back to the Rangers, though, that, again, depending on the matchups, I mean, if the Rangers, let's just say, okay, for instance, they're a wild card. Okay. They're not going to catch New Jersey or Carolina. You're a wild card team. Okay. So you're drawing either the Capitals, the Panthers, or the Maple Leafs. Okay. Depending on, how everything finishes up. You're telling me if you're the Rangers and you face Washington, understandably last year, probably a little different with the Capitals, but you face them again in the first round, you don't feel good that maybe you got a shot to win that series. So I think that they do. They do have a good shot to beat the Capitals. Now, I don't know about if they face the Panthers, if they beat them 4 times, or even, Toronto could be a toss-up. But imagine if you got Rangers Capitals in the first round again. How Washington be like, oh, we got to see these guys again now, and we're the number 1 seed. So I don't think the Rangers are going to win it all, but I could see where maybe they could turn some heads if they get in the playoffs.
And I guess a lot of also that's going to have to happen is what takes place at the deadline. So again, as we close out here, Kevin, why don't you just let the viewers know exactly how you're going to be keeping up to date with what's going on with the NHL on a daily and a weekly basis?
Once we come back from the 4-nation break and the NHL is back and going, we plan on going a few times a week here on the channel, doing a video. I've really isolated first periods and how teams fare in that. And, understandably, the good news about it is, you're out in a 20-minute, or I guess you say 45 minutes or so, period, and in real time. And you don't worry about overtimes or shootouts, first period, how these teams fare. And I'll give you those numbers, several times a week on the big card nights of who to look for from not only a side perspective, but also a total perspective, who's got the best overruns, underruns in the first period, who to play, who to fade, and give you a couple picks as well. So that's something we'll be doing moving forward after the break.
And Jan, of course, we're looking forward to getting you on here more often, and maybe we'll be able to put more videos, like collaborative videos together too. That would be really cool. In the meantime, I know how busy you are with all of you. You said at the beginning of the show how many different outlets that you're working on. So what is the latest? What are you going to have available out there? Are you working on anything special, or how are you going to get ready for the playoffs with some of the outlets you work with?
Sure. So, clearly for Hockey Buzz, it's been focused on the Rangers in the 4 nations. I may end up focusing on a team as well, but they got 6 players in there, spread amongst 3 of the 4 teams. So I'll be kind of focused on their 4 for Team US, 1 in Sweden, 1 in Finland. Hockey News, we'll be doing actually some top 10 columns and also, biggest surprises, biggest disappointments from a fantasy perspective. So be a good way to kind of keep on top of what's gone on in the league overall, is doing some of that research associated with it. And then RotoWire just submitted my most recent version of the risers and fallers column. So probably do something as probably a season to date kind of a recap in terms of same type thing, teams guys that have been the biggest risers, guys that have been the biggest disappointments. I mean, Kevin kind of talked about a couple in Nashville with Stamkos and probably Saros, probably two of those that have to be considered as some of the biggest disappointments, and guys maybe like Marco Rossi and a couple other guys are probably some of the little bit of the surprises season today, especially as I mentioned, Marchenko would probably be one of them, just given how good he was for Columbus this year. So just the kind of the conglomeration of all those will definitely most certainly keep me on top of what's going on in hockey, plus obviously watching the Four Nations as well and seeing what goes on there.
And we're going to have links in the description for all of that content that's out there from Jan. So you can check that out. And then once we get to the playoffs, that's when we're really going to have a lot of fun. So I'm going to bug you guys quite a bit to make sure we can do as many hockey playoff shows as possible, because nothing beats the postseason in the NHL, right, guys?
As I've always said, there is nothing that beats playoff overtime hockey unless your team is one of the two teams playing. And then right. It's the most nerve-wracking you could possibly have in sports.
Yeah, let alone if it's a game 7.
Yeah, it's a lot of pacing. A lot of pacing, as Kevin probably can attest.
Yeah. Well, guys, great job. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, because we are definitely looking forward to getting as much hockey content on his channel. And it looks like we're going to be able to do that finally. So once again, check out the links in the description for all the content that's available. Kevin is going to be participating real soon once the Four Nations is over and we get back to hockey. And I believe that's is that the last week of the month? That's when they come back?
The 22nd, Saturday the 22nd.
Saturday. Okay. So it's actually a couple days before the last week, which is the 24th, I believe, that Monday. Yeah, that Monday. All right. So anyway, that'll be it for our hockey coverage here for this particular video. Thanks a lot. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Comments, questions, anything like that, let us know. We really want to be able to, get everybody going here on the channel with our hockey coverage, and we'll see you guys next time.